Hey everyone, today I'm going to be showing off a couple of my favorite blink locations throughout the Alpine Borderlands. Having knowledge of your terrain is very important in World vs. World, and taking advantage of your class's mobility skills can be the difference between life and death. The purpose of this video is to show newer players some of the more interesting spots that they can shadow step to, and maybe give some veterans a refresher in case they've forgotten that you can actually blink to a couple of these places. I try to give at least one blink per objective in the Borderlands, but this is by no means a comprehensive list. I'll be using my Ellie, who uses Lightning Flash for most of these blinks. Lightning Flash has a range of 900, which means if you're running a class that has a 1200 range shadow step, you should be able to reach these without any issue. We're going to start at the North Camp and work our way down south. All locations will be timestamped in the video description below if you want to skip ahead. North Camp is kind of boring for blinks. It's pretty flat. Most players know about using these hills here located to the western side of the camp to get some leverage on players attacking. But if the fight pushes further back, you can actually blink up onto these cliffs as well. It gives you more distance between you and your opponent and some more escape options. It works for the other side too. Looking at this cliffside here at the northeastern camp, it certainly looks like it's terrain that you can't blink onto. However, looks can be deceiving. Starting at this rock face, you can blink up to northeast camp from below the cliff with a 1200 range blink. For my elementalist with his 900 range blink, this was the earliest point I could get him to blink up to northeast camp, but I wasn't able to get my thief's infiltrator arrow to work there. For your own reference, cliffs to the left of this area can all be shadow stepped up to, however the cliffs to the right cannot. This is one of my favorite jukes to pull on people. If you're engaging with an opponent up here on this high ground, you can just drop down towards the sentry, and then once your blink is ready, shadow step right back up, leaving your opponent down below. They'll either have to waste a blink of their own to continue the fight, or take the long way around to re-engage. If you'd like to make some real space between you and your opponent, you can also blink to this cliff face here, making your opponent have to take the real scenic route in order to catch you. I did try to blink up to the bridge with my Mesmer, but I could never achieve it, so I don't think it's possible. And just in case any new players are watching this canyon between Northeast Camp and Northeast Tower, just about every cliff face here is a shadow step target, so feel free to use your blinks to get out of this low ground as you need. Northwest Camp is kind of boring despite being surrounded by cliffs. While you can blink up to some of the cliffs leading towards North Camp, you can't blink up the steep incline with the wooden beams, and these rocks over here are off limits too. In fact, this rock just steals your blink. There is this spot towards the back of the camp though. On the left and right sides of this little crevice, the walls are unblinkable, but if you aim your cursor to the furthest point in the back, you can actually blink right onto this high ground. This gives you a straight shot to the jumping puzzle, which if you're being chased, should remove any camp buffs that your opponents have. And just another tip for new players, this switchback as well as the switchback by Northeast Camp are all shadow step targets. Use them as you advance north. Because of balancing issues, most of the towers don't have very interesting blink locations, but Northeast Tower is the exception. You can shadow step from this bridge over to the bridge closer to the Lord's Room. The most use this blink could probably get is a cheeky portal bomb if there's a Zerg holding on the rocks forward. You can make this blink with any 1200 range blink, so that includes Fleshworm and Thief's Shadow Step. However, 900 and lower range blinks won't reach. This is because if you step out onto this outcrop of rocks, you will no longer be able to find a valid path to target. Yeah, I don't get it either. Like the towers, a lot of the keeps can be iffy with their blink spots. The most important thing to know about Garrison is that you can blink to the wooden walkway that surrounds the Lord's Room. If you're entering Lord's from the northern entrance, you could blink up to this gate area and actually get great access to the high ground and scope out the Lord's Chamber without having to actually go through the choke point. This little area by Bay is usually pretty heavily trafficked when there's a Zerg trying to break into Bay from the Worm Gate. If you find yourself trapped by a Zerg here, blink to any point along this rock surface to the left to get out of the canyon. If you happen to find yourself trapped here on the outer roads of hills, you can blink up these cliffs to get back to the upper level. This is a great blink if you're kiting enemies or about to get run over by a Zerg. Just be aware, you can't blink up to the area that would be considered part of the inner hills, only the outer. The Lord's Ruin Hills is probably one of the most deadly in all of World vs. World. The site is extremely compact, surrounded by a high ground, and the only exit is through a very tight choke point. Needless to say, knowing your way around this room is key to survive. If you try to escape the pit by shadow stepping and aim for the ledge itself, you'll get an invalid path to target, but this is misleading. Instead, aim your cursor towards the center of the guardrail and you'll blink right through it to the high ground. Escaping the room though is another matter. This spot over by hills is absolutely my favorite spot to blink up to in the Alpine Borderlands. It's actually so great it got me called a wall hacker once. You can aim your cursor here into this little V-shaped crevice and blink straight up. Once you're up there, your opponent can't follow you unless they have a blink of their own, and they have to go all the way around to the tower to catch you. I'm going to start talking about the ruins now, all of which have some really fun blinks. The first one I'll talk about is Northwest Ruin. You can blink up the stairs to reach the point's high ground from either the front side or the back. You can also blink to the top of this rock here, which may not seem like much, but believe me, it has saved my life more times than I'd care to admit. Most of the cliffs on this side of the northeast ruin can all be shadow stepped up to if you're being chased from either hills or Garrison. By the capture point itself, you can actually blink to the wooden walkway that surrounds the back side of the point by the cannon. A fun way to use this is to come at this point from this angle here. Aim your cursor through this window and you'll blink right up to the walkway. This not only gives you the high ground, but a great chance to surprise who's ever capping. The cliffs in this canyon in between Southeast Ruin and hills are blinkable, but they seem very particular in the places you can actually target. Instead, blink closer up to the base of the ruin itself. It just seems more reliable to me. If you're chased up the stairs by the Southeast Ruin, you could actually blink directly up to the wooden platform that's above you. If you're using a class that has a 900 range blink like Elementalist, you have to go up the stairs a little bit in order to use it. Other classes with 1200 range blinks can do it just from the ground level. This little ledge here is actually great for jukes. You can run right off and then blink right back up. By the time they've realized they've overcommitted, you're already gone. You can also blink up the side of the cliff right here, or directly onto this bridge. This cliffside here is often used as a catapult ground to attack the southeastern tower, but it's also a useful spot to retreat to if the fight in the field outside the tower isn't going your way. This underground tunnel is one of the best places to kite opponents who chase you down by the south ruin. As you run into the tunnel here, you can point your cursor upwards and shadow step directly onto the stairs above you, leaving your opponent on the lower level. This trick also works for the bridge in the middle of the tunnel, and the bridge closest to the southwest ruin. You could also just blink up the cliffside if you'd like to, but I find this much more predictable and less confusing for any player that happens to be chasing you. You can't blink up directly in the main part of the tunnel though, so don't try it. These blinks through the ground can be achieved on just about any class with the shadow step, regardless of any kind of line of sight that seems to be needed. Bonus points if you shadow step up like this. Both of the northern edges of the south ruin can be used for shadow step jukes. If you're being chased by a player who's tunnel visioning you, lead them off the cliffside here, then blink back up. It really catches a lot of Zerg players by surprise. I don't know why. The last ruin to talk about is Southwest Ruin. You can blink up to the seating area from just about anywhere in the center of this point. Another fun trick is that if you have an opponent targeted, you can shadow step through this wall. Use that to surprise anyone who might be catapulting the southwest tower. Southwest Camp's entire entrance from the 2 hills and the roof can all be shadow stepped to. It's a great way to avoid zergs heading to bay. In the camp itself, you can shadow step up this hill here and use the houses to kite. Just like the southwest, the roof of the southeastern camp entrance is also a shadow step target. However, did you know you can also blink up the side of the rock here? If you aim your cursor in this area, you'll blink straight up. This next blink isn't crazy useful, but it can confuse some newer players. If you're inside the fishing house here, you can aim your cursor up to shadow step directly through the floor above you. This also works for the smaller fishing house further in the back towards the harpy, but not for the fishing house that's closer to the attacking spawn. If you do get stuck in this house, however, you can blink up to the wooden deck from this spot here. Finally, since South Camp is also boring for blinks, I'm going to talk about the bridges here. These bridges make great disengagement tools. Jump off when you're under pressure and use the base here to line of sight. Once you're done playing Ring Around the Rosie, you can blink up to any point along the bridge to get away. It is also possible to blink up from directly under the bridge, but to do so, you need to position your cursor about where the land meets the bridge or else it will fail. Good to know if you get CC'd in this particular spot. Thanks everyone for watching. I know this video was a bit long. Originally, I wanted to include both EBG and the Desert Borderlands in one video, but while editing, I realized that was not happening. I do plan on uploading videos for these Borderlands in the near future because they also have some really fun blink locations as well. I really hope you enjoyed this video, perhaps learned something new. If you did, make sure to share it with some newer players to World v World. I think these are great tips that any player can learn, even if they're interested in roaming or zerging, whatever. If you have a special blink location that I didn't mention here, you should post it in the comments. Nothing is more exciting than learning that you can shadow step up to somewhere that you originally didn't think that you could. Thank you again, and till next time, later.